passed out, trapped here in my room. No trace left here of you. Cold call, another person or two. Seems like I'm the only one home. Aligned with the sun, shadows on everyone. No reason to run, hide out inside. Just stay at home, so lost and alone. Be here, unknown, don't tell a soul. Bad taste, can't seem to get it out. Blank space where you shut my mouth. Filled yours with love to spit it out. I thought we wanted the same thing. Trust me, it's alright. Goodbye, now let me try to sleep. I don't care to say goodnight. It would be a lie, another fleeting dream. Trust me, it's alright. Goodbye, you never meant anything. You mean nothing to me. Just stay at home, so lost and alone. Be here, unknown, don't tell a soul. Been so down since you left, can't get out of this hole. Stay safe at home, so lost and alone.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Touchline Talk at 2 on Friday afternoon. We have a very special installment today. We have a guest on, the beautiful Connor Holden, who's a wonderful Chelsea fan, who's fantastically given up his time today to speak all things Chelsea, all things Maresca, which I know that he is thrilled to discuss. Look at that face. Providing his opinion on the City's tactics this season and also previewing the game ahead on Sunday. Please make sure you go check out Connor's channel. It is tagged in the video title. If you want in-depth analysis, in my opinion, the best analysis on Chelsea content out there, then Connor's channel is for you. Connor, matey, thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm about as good as you can be when your New Year's Eve is disrupted by your manager being sacked and knowing that you're playing City the following weekend. So take from that what you will, but it has been exhausting. I have been up, I'm probably on about 4 hours sleep from last night because I was watching Liam Rossigna Strasbourg games, who looks like he's going to take over at Chelsea.
In the trenches.
So I've watched 6 full 90s in the last 48 hours. So, yes, tired is the word, I think.
Yes, and there is a potentially fit Rodri to contend with on Sunday.
Brilliant.
As well. Brilliant, exactly,
Yeah.
indeed, yeah. So it's going well, it's going well. If you guys have any questions or thoughts for Connor or myself as we go through today's show, whether on Chelsea or whether on City, then please feel free to pop it in the chat. But we would be remiss, I think, and we will get onto City chat. I do want to get Connor's thoughts on Semenyo, of course. I want to get his thoughts on City, generally speaking. But it would be remiss for us to not open today's show with the Maresca situation. Something that I hadn't planned for us to discuss when we first discussed doing this show. He's a manager who many City fans want post-Pep. Connor, mate, what's going on? What are your thoughts on the situation? Because I'm pretty sure that you rated him quite highly. So
Yeah.
just here's a platform to air your grievances slash platform him as a pretty decent manager.
Yeah, I mean, I'm genuinely fuming that he's going. I rate him extremely highly. I think that he's shown on the biggest stages that he can battle tactically with the very best in one-game setups. I think that his general profile of how he sets his team up from week to week it profiles with the elites, and that is he's like an elitist coach in that sense. I think he goes to that level, and I think that essentially where the fall down has been is very much to do with the project at Chelsea rather than the quality of Maresca. I think what's happened is we've won the Club World Cup, we've got top 4, and Maresca has done all of that within his confined sort of like boundaries of what he's allowed to do with younger players, less experience, certain players that he has to use as well, being sort of fed down from the board. And he's done all of that within those constrictions. So I think what's then happened is he's gone, look what I've shown you I can do. Let's take this to another level together. And the owners have said, no, we're sticking to our regime. We're your boss. And they don't like that he's talked up to them and sort of made a point. And I think what's happened there is, rather than it being based on performance, which is what will be sort of the main narrative now being used in terms of we've won 1 in 7, and that will be sort of the narrative that's used to push why Maresca's been sacked. I don't believe it's to do with that at all. I think everybody knows within the context of what's happened this season that he's actually done quite well. Like, yes, he's had a topsy patch in the last few, like the sort of festive period, which we did last year too. But the context of we've had no Levi Colwill, Cole Palmer's only just come back. We've had sort of like a 3-game suspension to Casado. We've had Reece James and Wesley Fofana who've been managing minutes. We've had so many players. Like, the context within that is quite drastic, really. And I think it has essentially got to the point where Maresca wanted to take us to the next level. He was the one with the ambition to go to the next level, and they essentially don't want to go with that because they want to be the ones in charge. And I think it's an ego thing. And honestly, I think Maresca's the winner. I think he's the one that walks away as the winner of this. I think he waited for his stock to get to the highest point, tried to use it to signify change at Chelsea, and it's backfired against him. But it's not backfired against his reputation because, as you've said, City are clearly interested, Juve are clearly interested, and he's shown he's a top manager. So he's not going to be short of offers whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and as Musty says in the chat there, Maresca was literally manager of the month last month. His stock is now at an all-time high. He was, I don't know if the rumours were justified, but he was linked with a move to Manchester City, allegedly in talks with City, depending on who you believe. It just seems like the term I used on Twitter was circus, to be honest with you. Sorry about that. But yeah. I just don't really understand what the long-term goal is for a Chelsea, for a club which historically is known for chopping and changing managers, but is sort of known for doing that with an eye on, okay, but it's best for business, it's best for winning trophies. We've just sacked a manager who's done that. So it seems like a very weird shift in policy and direction, which is just fascinating to see. And I don't really understand, again, what the long-term thought process is. Just in the short term, because someone was asking in the chat earlier, what does that mean for like the managerial situation on Sunday? Because obviously Chelsea play City then. Maresca's no longer in the job. There's not going to be a long-term manager in place by then. So who is going to be in the dugout against City at the Etihad?
So it's McFarlane. He's the under-21 coach. He's stepped up, and all of the under-21 staff have stepped up with him. The assistants, the analysts. The only person that is in the dugout that was already there is Bernardo Cueva, the set-piece coach. He will still be there, but everybody else is the under-21 setup, and that will just be it'll pretty much be for that game. They've had a press conference today, and they've basically come out and said that he's only really met the players today. So, like, it's going to be interesting. I think one of the main things that was mentioned, and I actually said this on a podcast earlier this morning before this press conference took place, I think a lot of this game is going to be a lot more on the players, sort of how they sort of rally together and do it themselves. Apparently Reece James has been really important in the last day or two in terms of doing that. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's more important than who's on the sideline when it comes to Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a leader, isn't he? That does make sense. Maresca then, long term, City fans are interested in the concept of him. You're obviously very high on him as well. Yes. What has been Chelsea's general structure, tactical shape that they've been utilising under Maresca this season? Because we were talking about it before we went live. Even though it's not going to be Maresca on Sunday, it's still going to be, one would assume, a Maresca blueprint Chelsea side. Because you're not just going to chop and change an entire philosophy and structure over the course of a few days for the sake of an under-21 manager. Yeah. So we can still view it through the lens of Maresca, and that's what I wanted to do for this stream anyway. So tell us, in possession, out of possession, what are the key principles? What should we be looking out for on Sunday? What is it that Maresca does so well, in your opinion, that makes you so high on him?
Yeah, so, I mean, what I'll start with is last season, because I think it's more inductive of what he is as a manager, because he had Cole Palmer available the whole time, and he had Levi Colwill, who was imperative. So his main idea is essentially to go into a 3-2-5 on the ball. Now, again, very, very sort of elitist, high-end European football teams, that is the meta. But such an important part of that is having a central centre-back who can orchestrate, and that was Levi Colwill.
Yes.
Now, during that, like with that 3-2-5 setup, his preference is to invert fullbacks, and this has been a big sort of talking point at Chelsea. Is there's a lot of people that don't like the inverted fullback. It's a load of woke nonsense, is what they would call it. I don't agree, but that's the term. He prefers to do that again because, firstly, at Chelsea, you've got players like Enzo Fernandez and Cole Palmer in the middle of the pitch, in the pockets, and you've got to protect in transition. So usually the role of the inverted fullbacks is, of course, they're going to come inside so that if that ball does break down, they're in the rest defence ready to, again, attach and counter press and make sure that you're not easy to beat in transition. So that's my biggest reasoning as to why Maresca prefers inverted, and again, the recovery distances, rather than having overlapping fullbacks who are going to be far out of position. And in order to do that, which is something you guys have done this season, you need to have, like when you're going to leave those fullbacks wider, you need those spaces in transition, the half spaces, to be plugged by other players. And Enzo Fernandez, Cole Palmer, not so much. But again, Bernardo Silva works his socks off. Like, I mean, even Phil Foden's been better defensively, in my opinion, doing that job. But even Reinders, lots of players that can cover in transition in that sense. So I think that's important. And I think this last season especially, we didn't have that. Now, fast forward to this season, the 3-2-5 that we usually go into is probably not as prominent because, as I said, Levi Cole was not there. And Maresca's, this is where the whole sort of breakdown happened, is in the summer, Maresca's only real sort of transfer request that he actually put out to the public was he wanted a central defender. As soon as Colwill got injured, he came out, he made it publicly clear, I want a centre back. They didn't give him it. So I think from that point, it's been a lot to do with, right, how can he then adapt his tactics where it's not going to be so important on that central centre-back role, which he doesn't believe there's a player that can do that other than Colwill and Tosin. And Tosin's had defensive problems, so it's one or the other. It's sort of like pick your poison.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, we've sort of gone to a 2-3 base where you could call it a 4-1, where you keep the back four kind of intact, and then the fullbacks move in, both of them inverting alongside, say, Caicedo as the solo pivot, which you won't have to worry about because he's suspended. Yeah, brilliant. So you have him with the two fullbacks, and again, this is more so against back four teams, which is again what you guys would play. And you would sort of form that 2-3 base instead to still protect in transition, allow Fernandez and Palmer or whoever to be in the pockets, but as well just to have that extra sort of defensive solidity in the middle of the park, but also mean that you can now form better rotations in wide areas. So instead, what we've seen this season, as I said, usually it'd be the fixed 3-2. Now we've seen a 2-3, but with more rotations in wide areas, which allows Enzo Fernandez to drop in, get on the ball in defensive midfield positions, but not have the defensive midfield responsibility. And that's been the tweak that Maresca's made this season, I think, to offset the loss of Levi Colwill. And again, lots of changing in sort of personnel with tactics and with how we've had to sort of reintegrate a lot of youth players. I think that's a massive reason why we've struggled to stay consistent this year. And a lot of Chelsea fans will see that as Maresca not being adaptive. But as I've tried to sort of explain in my best ability there, I would argue it's the opposite. I think he's been extremely adaptive to try and offset the weaknesses that we lost through Colwill.
That's interesting. So a lot of the shapes you've mentioned there, you know, a 3-2, a 2-3, I think you said a 3-1 there as well. So the base comes from the fullbacks always inverting. Is that right? Every single time, essentially. Okay.
More or less every time. That there's been one-off occasions where, let's say, Gusto is at right back. He would maybe overlap Gusto and push Cole Palmer or Estevao inside. So as we did against PSG in the Club World Cup final, usually that's like the big game strategy. So maybe it could have been something we did against you, and it still could be, where Gusto plays right back and James plays in midfield with Caicedo. and then we see Palmer on the right and Enzo Fernandez in the 10. But it would either way. You can expect to see James alongside. Well, not Casado this time, but
Yeah.
it would have been. So they would have found their way into the pivot. So it's only really if Gusto is in the lineup that you'd expect something different than inverted fullbacks to protect. And even when he is in the lineup, there's still a good chance that he's doing that too.
Yeah, that's interesting because that's what City started this season with. There was lots of question marks about how City are going to play this season with the fullbacks. Is it going to be an inverting situation? Is it going to be more so as like in a traditional manner? And we've actually seen the latter in more recent weeks, certainly. Again, we started the season, excuse me, with players tucking inside, like Rico Lewis, for example, but that doesn't really lend itself naturally to a Nico O'Reilly or to a Mateus Nunes, who are far more these like wing-back profiles almost, where they're able to provide the width outside there. But so it sounds like at Chelsea, the natural width is provided more so by the natural wide players. So is there much scope therefore for those fullbacks to attack, or are they strictly under Maresca's instructions of no, like Reece James, for example, you're not really given license to bombard and push up like perhaps you did a few years ago. You are now just out and out, like think of it like a Rico Lewis or a John Stones situation where like, no, you are basically, for all intents and purposes, a midfielder.
Yeah, I think the fullback usage is such a big part of Maresca because he's always said that he doesn't really like overlapping fullbacks. So
Interesting. Okay.
that is like a big thing. But again, it's hard to completely judge because when you look at the profiles at Chelsea, what we've got in terms of width holders, you have Pedro Neto and Garnacho this season, or Jamie Gittins, and then like last season, Noni Madueke, for example. Those are quite clearly players that thrive a little bit more being wide and starting as those width holders. And then if you look at the fullbacks as well, players like Cucurella, Reece James is somebody who's every time you've tried to give him those large distances, he has pulled up with injuries. So the natural thing to do this year was to not let him do that and try to bring him back to fitness and keep him as available as possible, which has worked. He's now been fit for over a year, touch wood. So he is like through Maresca's choice, that has helped to keep him fit. The one that you can talk about again is Malo Gusto, because he is a little bit more of that profile where you can overlap a fullback, and we've seen him use it in certain games when he decides to play Gusto. So I don't think he's as hell-bent against it as it was maybe made out when he first sort of came into a job and he quite literally said, I'm not keen on overlapping fullbacks. I think it is more just to do with the profiles of what you've got and how he thinks he can maximize them. Now, again, this season, my biggest thing has been, now that we're not playing that sort of 3-2, it's been a little bit more the 2-3. The fullbacks are a little bit higher, but also tucked in, so next to Casado. But where I spoke about those rotations that they make, if you think about the sort of left back, left wing, and then the number 8, left number 8, that's sort of like your left wide triangle. And then the same on the right, you got the right back, right number 8, right wing. What we've seen a little bit more of from this season, which was a bit more of a coaching sort of like development from Maresca, and like the next step of, if you're talking about creating Maresca's 2.0 of Chelsea, was that again, if Enzo Fernandez is your left 10, he can drop in a bit, and then Cucurella is then free to sort of push on and maybe provide an overlap or provide an underlap. And that still allows the fullback to be a little bit more of a supporting cast for the winger so that they're not isolated. So it's more, so I think he tried to adapt and bring new ways of using those rotations to provide support further up the pitch. But he's still quite, I think he is a bit more pragmatic in the sense that he wants to give those attackers the support they need whilst not losing the balance of a rest defense. I think he's quite big on protection in that sense, which a lot of the top coaches are.
Yes, definitely. I've got two questions for you just on that. Sorry, I'm picking your brain here. One which is quite a quick one, which is just from Sarthak, who's asking, what's the role of Cucurella when you do play a back three? But then the longer question I had was, there's been, because I don't have much Chelsea content on my timeline for obvious reasons, because I'm not a Chelsea fan, but occasionally it does come through, obviously your tweets of course, but sometimes and this season it's the first time I've noticing it, and perhaps it is just Twitter being Twitter, there's been a lot of surprising criticisms of Cole Palmer this season from a lot of Chelsea fans on Twitter have noticed. Now, again, perhaps that's just Twitter doing Twitter things. He's obviously been injured to start the season, but basically the conversation I've been seeing, and I would like your take on whether it's warranted or not, is people are now questioning whether Palmer should be playing as an out-and-out number 10. They're saying that no, stick him at right wing and then just grant him access to that right half space via an overlapping fullback. That would seem at odds with what you just said about Maresca's setup with not really preferring overlapping fullbacks. What's your measured take on that? Are people making mountains out of molehills here? Is it reactive fans being reactive? And also just like what is, in your view, the best utilization of Palmer? I threw a lot of questions at you there.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Palmer's he's an interesting one, like you say, with the fan base, because he obviously hits such heights that I think the standard for him is just absolute premium. And a lot of the time you forget that he has struggled with injuries this season. Like, he has barely played. Like, he's only just really returning to fitness. He's still being managed now in terms of 70 minutes, 60 minutes. I don't think he's played a full 90 since he returned. So that's how he's being used. In terms of how he's used as a 10 or a right winger, again, I think a lot of people accredit, rather than thinking about where he is on the pitch, they think under Pochettino, he was labelled as a right winger. So, and that's the season he blew up. So again, if you're talking just sort of simplistic way to view it, Palmer played right wing. He was brilliant. Under Maresca, Palmer hasn't been as good. He's played as a 10. So it's the easy sort of like way to narrate it and sort of think about it.
It's the outcome bias.
But in reality, he would end up in the same zones under both. He would end up in the right half space, whether it's as a 10 for Maresca. Now, sometimes he goes to the left half space, but again, he's in those in-between phases. And the same under Poch. He was never an out-and-out right winger. He would come inside, and then somebody else would hold the width. So zone-wise, he'd stay in the same. Also, important to think, someone that plays very attacking football like Poch, it's somebody like Iriola, if you want to think of it now. Somebody who's extremely direct, like instantly to the point, wants to attack. Attackers will naturally look better in those setups because they get the ball quicker. They've got that license to take risks. The game state's more chaotic, and it just suits them because there's more space for them to do their thing. And that would be the same with any attacker. They would, if you asked attacker, like, what is if you wanted to see the best of them, it's space. Give them space and they'll thrive. For me, Cole is too good to be pinned out wide and not touching the ball. He needs to be in the center of everything. He needs to be allowed to come and grab the ball if he wants it deep. He needs to be allowed to receive it in the pockets. And as we've seen a bit this season, he needs to also then have the license. If he wants to drift wide to pick up the ball wide, then he also has that license too. And that's where those wide triangular rotations needed to come in. And that was, again, a criticism that you could have had in the first season, but something that Maresca did try to add in the second season that sort of offset that. Because, again, if Cole goes outside, then you need whoever's on the right, say Esteval, which we haven't seen enough of the two of them together, he can come inside. And that's a rotation that can allow Cole to have the freedom he needs to thrive. In terms of how he's been this year, I think it's just, again, he's very new to coming back into the team. That wasn't phrased correctly, but you know what I mean? He's like fresh back into the team, and he's clearly still nursing something. Like, after 60, 70 minutes, he does look like he's struggling to run. So it's quite clear that there's something happening and like still going on with him. So I'm not worried about him at all. And I think that, yes, like there might be patches where he goes on like a little bit of a hot streak, but I think even under Maresca, he was unlucky to not have better numbers, because I think the underlying numbers that he produced in Maresca's system were actually still very strong. It's just he went through a really poor patch in front of goal at the back end of last season that then made it out that he was in really poor, like that Maresca had almost ruined him. But if anything, I actually think it was that he just went on a bit of a lull, which at a young age, after having such a hot streak, was somewhat expected. Palmer wasn't going to run hot forever. Yes. So I think that's sort of where I am with him.
No, definitely. Look, it's incredibly hard. If you have a season like that, where I think maybe any other year, that could be like a player of the year season, for example. Yeah. That was in 23, 24. It's very hard to maintain those levels consistently when you are this younger player, especially, and certainly if you're coming back from an injury also. The way that you were describing Palmer, and in essence you were saying that he can play at right wing, but you don't really want to have him getting chalk on his boots. You want to give him that freedom. You certainly want to give him central access because he's too good to just be shunted out there. You want him preferably impacting the game in the centre. It sounds like a certain City player who is also, in my opinion, too good to be shunted out to the wings on his own. And I'm sure you know who I'm talking about in Shirky there. They do, of course, share a similar number of traits there. That's interesting to get your take on Palmer. And I think people get my thoughts on Palmer wrong, like, because I do, and we've had this conversation before, I do not agree that it was a mistake for City to sell him, but then like some people conflate that and sort of think that whenever he does
that you
well,
wouldn't have him now.
Or that I'm like upset if he does well or something like that, and that's not correct at all. Like I'm happy that he's doing well because it's a great mark for our academy, for example. So it's hopefully he's able to get back to form, and I've got no doubt that he will. It will be fascinating to see. Just I don't want to make this too doom and gloom, but given the context we were talking about earlier with Maresca going, what's the future of Chelsea? If there's not a future of we need to win trophies, then at what point does a player of Cole Palmer's quality say, well, you know what, I'm here to win the best trophies. I'm good enough to win the Premier League. I'm good enough to compete for the Champions League. At what point do I actually go? And I'm sorry to introduce that thought.
That's a thought I've had.
It's a legitimate thing to worry about, isn't it?
Yeah, since the Maresca sacking, like, and this is something again that like, I'm sort of like circling back onto the project for a second of it. But the only way, in my opinion, to make a project like what Chelsea are trying to do work, where you've got lots of younger players and the aim is to grow together, is to also allow the manager to grow with them. And Maresca was doing that. So the only way that could have worked, in my opinion, was if Maresca got to season 3 or season 4, and he was like, he'd built the culture around him, he'd built the team around him, and the stars and the core that were already there. But every time you reset that, now with Maresca going, I think it just caps your ceiling as a top 4 cup contender team, because you've not got the consistency to turn yourself into a title challenger. Like, as you said earlier, with Roman, where he'd sort of hire and fire, the culture there was the players were good enough already because you had leaders in every position. You had internationals. So you could bring in a new manager who could freshen it up for 2 years because the core was the same. But now what you're doing is you're refreshing the core, you're refreshing with lots of new young players and throwing them all in. And you're also refreshing the manager. So there's never any time for stability. And I think that the project, like, they've got it wrong in that sense. If they were going to go down the young route, then I think that the one thing they should have been really hell-bent on was building around one coach and allowing them to build as a group like that. And the other thing I just wanted to mention, because you said about Shirky, which I think is bang on, because one thing I've loved about what Pep's doing this season is how he's using Bernardo Silva to platform Shirky. Yes. I think it's been absolutely brilliant. And this is exactly what I mean when it comes to sort of having a yin and yang with, if you want to get the best out of, like, say, your creative number 10, and it doesn't matter where they are on the pitch, if they're on the inside, the outside, you've got a player who is, he's there to platform the more talented footballer. But again, like, that's really harsh because Bernardo Silva is extremely talented, but in terms of just a superstar, Shirky, and what like Bernardo Silva has done in terms of covering his pressing, and like if he needs to press higher, he'll go into that role, and Shirky will take the sort of the less burdened role in the press. And then if Shirky needs to come inside, Bernardo will go outside, and he will platform Shirky, and it's just been, I think that's been the best thing Guardiola's done this season, in my opinion, in terms of platforming, is between those two. I think it's been brilliant. Yeah,
it's not something I would ever have envisaged. I was pretty adamant on Bernardo not being in our starting 11 before the start of the season. I was concerned when he was made captain because I felt that, well, that means he's going to start a lot of games, but I was dead wrong on that. He's actually been vital to Shirky performing well. I don't think that there's been a league game outside of the Spurs game where Shirky didn't have a good game, certainly off ball. I don't think there's been another game in the league where Shirky started and Bernardo hasn't. Such has been the importance of Bernardo, and you're right, he doesn't do the sexy work, he doesn't do the flashy work, but it is still incredibly vital, important, fundamental work in order to allow others to flourish. It is selfless, it is it is a facilitatory role. I don't know if that's a word, but you know what I mean. So when people say, and I think it's fair to criticize every player, but when people say Bernardo offers nothing, get him out of the team, I think you're indirectly saying that. Well, therefore you sort of want Cherki out of the team also, but they don't realise they're saying it because, as you say, it does go underappreciated. Bernardo's also been very important with helping City build up this season. I'm sure you've been keeping up to date with City. I don't know if you've been keeping up to date with my thoughts on it. In my opinion, build-up's been a big problem for City this season. How does Chelsea generally operate out of possession, off ball? I can assume we're not going to expect to see like a low block back five on Sunday, for example. Are we looking at a really aggressive, high intense pressing side? What's the shape that they go for? And I mean, ideally, are there any weaknesses in that setup?
Yeah, so we tend to press in a bit of a 4-1-4-1. So you'd have your centre forward, and then you'd have the sort of two, let's say, eights with Enzo and Palmer. They'd be on the double pivot. Then you'd have your two wingers, and then of course you've got, say, Casado usually sweeping behind them, and then a back four intact. The idea is to be man for man, to go aggressive. You start from that shape, but instantly, like the jumps that we sort of have been using this season are very much sort of, we shift our players from one side of the pitch. So let's say the most common one is Pedro Neto is on the right. He would jump forward in the press to press your centre back, in which case now your fullback is now open. So Gusto would then jump up to press the fullback, which then means our centre back, Wesley Fofana, has to cover over on whoever the winger is. So it's like that sort of like line of three on the outside, sort of making a curved shift as the ball to go man for man. Pressing high in that sense has actually been really good for us this season. It worked really well against Arsenal, really well against Barca. Yeah. But our intensity at times, especially as the season is continuing to wear on, is getting worse. And we're struggling a bit because, again, one, some of the players aren't always fit. Like the importance of specific parts of that press are very much people like Gusto and Fofana. Now, if they aren't in the team, that press can look weaker and the intensity can look off. And with the Club World Cup and the lack of pre-season, I think it is coming to fruition where not all games we can press at the highest intensity. And that's where our weakness is probably sort of going to come into this, is under Maresca. And again, this sort of comes into the if Maresca ends up at City, because this for me is Maresca's biggest weakness. And the one thing that I wanted him to, I was sort of watching him with one thing in my head, that if he is going to truly be elite, that this is the one thing I think he needs to change. Mm-hmm. He is exclusively man-oriented in terms of pressing. In terms of a zonal, there is no real zonal approach. He doesn't really have one. It is in the mid block, everybody is man for man. Like the references are man for man. So if somebody loses their duel and a centre mid gets dragged out of the middle, big open spaces, like that is a thing. And as I said, intensity at the top end of the pitch, quite good. But once we settle into like a bit of more of a mid block, we can get dragged around because the intensity sort of flax, and then you can drag our centre backs really high and exploit them behind. So there's lots of ways, I think, in terms of in the middle third, if City can get into settled possession in the middle third, mm-hmm. I think you could cause quite a few problems in terms of with Haaland in behind, stretching the pitch, and also just those really quick combination plays with the sort of like the three between the lines that you've been using at times.
Yeah, well, everything you've said just there really reminds me of the Bournemouth game that we had earlier in the season. I don't know if you can recall that, but Bournemouth went man-to-man as well, and that was one of the first games, I think it was the second game maybe, where we properly saw this pure central overload and the rotation essentially, where we had Cherki, Foden, Bernardo, Nico all occupying really weird positions. Like, Nico was sometimes playing as like an advanced midfielder. As such was the degree of the rotation, I assume, because Bournemouth went man-to-man, so we were trying to disrupt their man-oriented press. Yep. It is a risk doing that against City because Haaland exists. And if you leave him one-on-one at the back, and you give any space for whether it's the goalkeeper or a defender or a midfielder to play in Hall in a one-on-one situation. I mean, it didn't work out against Sunderland, but chances are you're going to have a bad time. If it's a toss-in, if it's a Fofana, if it's a Colwell, whoever it is, I would back Haaland to win that battle 9 times out of 10, because Chelsea don't necessarily possess centre-backs like Sunderland did. So from what you've said there, it's a high-risk approach. It can work, but when it doesn't, so it's almost like this high ceiling but low floor setup. If I don't know if you agree with that. Yeah, it's got the potential to be excellent, and when it works, hey, it works, and you're not getting anywhere near them. But if Caicedo makes an error, who's not even playing, if James makes an error, or Palmer, or whoever, if one part is not in perfect harmony with the rest, then that is a concern, especially against the best sides who have players, and especially with the returning Rodri. That's in the title of the stream, of course. With the returning Rodri, who is more than capable of turning away from pressure, and then when he's beaten that first man, all of a sudden you're a man down, aren't you? So that just seemed like a massive risk, in my opinion.
For sure, and as you've said, like, that will be without Caicedo, who is your best sort of, like, that's your best piece in a man-to-man press. If you're trying to implement that, your strength in that is that you have somebody like Caicedo, and he's not there. So instantly that worries me, because if we're going to do that, now the only thing that we could say is maybe they do try and go zonal, because it's like they see this as a City going to come on to us. If we press man for man without Caicedo and without the energy, then we are going to get played off the park. So maybe with Maresca now gone, we see something zonal, and then that's when you sort of come to fruition of, like, maybe that shows us that Maresca was very intent on not using it. So I'm really intrigued for the City game purely for that reason, because, again, I think a lot of the decisions will be from players like James discussing it with the sort of like under-21 staff that are going to be taking the game. So it'll be interesting to see which aspects stay, which I think a lot of the in-possession stuff will stay. And then the out-of-possession, it'll be really interesting to see how we press, if we press, and the sort of like shifts between those. I think it'll be quite telling.
Absolutely. Big up to Puneet. Thank you so much for renewing your membership on the channel. Love that from you. Your random footballer is Ronaldinho, and that's an excellent pull. Fantastic work there. I'm just going to, just before I ask Connor some more longer form questions, I'm just going to come to the chat for a second. So if you've got any questions for myself, Connor, or any topics you'd like us to discuss, or as I say, any more rapid fire questions about Chelsea, or what kind of things about just Maresca or City generally, then please get them in the comments, in the chat, sorry, right now. Now is the time to do that. Natando says we need Rodri in, and then Gavadio as a left back. And I know you didn't watch the Sunderland game, but in that second half, Gavadio went back to his the role that he did like a couple of years ago. You know, he was pushing up to left back, and he looked very lovely in that, in fairness. I think he had more shots than any other player on the pitch.
Who was centre backs there then? Ake?
Ake and Diaz, yeah. So Ake started, and O'Reilly, who didn't have the best game, came off, and Gavadio came on. He was absolutely wonderful. Big up to Spartacus. Thank you so much for renewing your membership as well, matey. Your random footballer is Nathan Dyer. Less of a competent pull than Ronaldinho. Question, I'll ask this as Connor. What is the best type of soup for a cold winter night? This is from Spartacus.
I'm not huge on soup, you know.
You know, I'm not either. I think it's a texture thing. I can't do soup or bisques.
Yeah, so I don't really have an answer for you, because I don't really tend to have it.
There you go. Connor is
tomato.
Just anything, whatever. I've heard chicken and sweet corn is very nice, so maybe go for that. I don't know. This is Connor, by the way, Connor Holden, because I know some people were asking earlier, you know, who is the guest. His channel is linked in the title of the video. Please go and check out his channel. Go subscribe. Fantastic tactical analysis. Very good videos on Chelsea. So if you want to learn more about our opponent on Sunday, that is the place to go 100%. Fenway says, Esteval looks like the real deal. Very scared to see our fullbacks try and contain him. And then I saw Spartacus counter that by saying who is Brazilian himself, by the way. He's a confidence player. He's not good in front of goal either. Your quick take on Esteval?
I think he's unbelievable. Really, really, really good. Like, he is really special. I think what Maresca was doing with him was to protect him long term for the club's benefit. But I think that that's another thing that supposedly, like we don't know for sure, was a bit of a sort of disagreement. I think the board wanted him to be played more instantly because he is obviously exciting, sells shirts, he's fun, he's a sort of like, what do you call it, a billboard player. Like
Yeah.
he's a big player. So yeah, I think he's brilliant. I don't think he'll play against you.
Okay, who's going to play instead?
I think that they're going to go the route of experience, and like as much as like I don't think people will like it, I think it will be Pedro Neto. I think it will be Gusto, Reece James, Palmer, not Esteval, Enzo. Like just a lot of the core group. I don't think any of the like 19, 18-year-old fringe players, Esteval or Joshua Chempong, for example, I think they might not play.
To be fair, that makes sense. You know, it's the first game post-manager being sacked at the Etihad. You want experience on the pitch. That makes complete sense, absolutely. This was in reference to our conversation about Palmer earlier, you know, potentially leaving Southwark, says Madrid are going to need a 10 in the coming years.
Another.
What would that look like for England with Bellingham and Palmer on the same side? Yeah, lots of people not happy with how Clearlake are running Chelsea, which you've obviously touched on.
Yeah.
Feminist people say Bernardo offers nothing are fools on Twitter. Yes, I think that's correct. What else are we saying here? Southwark says, I hear man-to-man, I hear Doku and Shirky. We're definitely central overloads with Doku, Shirky if possible. Definitely runs in behind in Haaland if possible also.
Because that's another thing. Kukurea looks like he might not be there either.
Oh, really?
And that's huge because, again, man for man, that's another huge aspect. Like, if it's Shirky or even if it's like whoever's on that side, usually Shirky on the right, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Coming inside. That would be Kukurea's sort of like man-to-man approach. He would go with him and he would stick to him like glue. But without Kukurea there, like, again, huge hole in that.
Yeah, massive. So, and we would expect to see, therefore, who? The left back.
This is where I might contradict myself a bit because I just realised I said Joshua Chempong wouldn't play. But then now that I'm thinking about it,
yeah,
we might not have a choice. So
there you go. Okay, big game for him, absolutely. Connor, if you were Pep heading into this match, how would you set up City's attack to take advantage of Chelsea's defensive liabilities?
Ooh.
Exploiting the man-for-man press, perhaps?
Yeah, pretty much similar to what you've done, really. Like you said, against Bournemouth, I think Haaland is key. I think using him at the right times, like we are very poor at sort of dealing with physicality. So I think if Haaland is there, even in a 2v1, like to keep testing that ball into him to then drop and like allow the second ball to be won by those three behind. So Foden, Shirky, Doku, whoever. And then, yeah, the man-to-man press, I think trying to exploit it by whichever side, if we were jumping in the same way we did under Maresca, trying to actually play down that side on purpose so that you force the jumps to then play into the middle to allow someone like Doku to win his 1v1 duel. And then all of a sudden it blows the pitch open because it's that you've now got the overload. There's no man for man because you've won the 1v1.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, exploit the man for man, definitely go direct if it's on and like make Chelsea sort of fight for it because in terms of at the back, especially there's weaknesses to be exploited for Haaland on those centre backs.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, definitely. BNE Plus says Caicedo was suspended. Yeah, he picked up another silly yellow card. Yes, he's not going to be playing, which is massive because I think he's a fantastic player. So that's really, really good for City, of course. So it's going to be an understrength Chelsea. It's going to be a really weird game. It's going to be a really weird game for Chelsea. What's my review, says Puneet. Oh, my tactical preview will come out tomorrow. My post-match analysis of the Sunderland game will come out later today, so stay tuned for that. And that's my job, actually, to rewatch the Sunderland game after this stream. Hooray! So that'll be lots of fun to watch a 0-0 back. Apparently the correct answer was any Thai or Vietnamese soups. Those are apparently the best. Does ramen count as a soup?
No, surely not.
No, because I like ramen. It's got a broth, but the broth isn't a soup, is it? No. I like ramen, though. That's in between, isn't it? Will Raheem Sterling play, says Naveen. Chill.
He might be going to West Ham, apparently, on loan.
Really? Ooh.
Supposedly.
Saving them from relegation. Yeah. Raheem
Coming
the Dream.
Play under Nuno. Plays a wing-back.
unbelievable scenes. We will be there. We will be there. Spartacus says, I don't think Estefao is that good right now, but his ceiling is mentally high. I think that's a pretty reasonable assessment.
Yeah.
Definitely a player for the future, 100%. Spartacus says, can you... Usul here says, terrific preview, gentlemen. Thank you. Big up to Connor for that. That's all him. He's doing all the talking. I'm just here talking about soup and ramen. So I've got a great easy job this afternoon. Spartacus says, can you ask Connor the Donnarumma question? But I don't know what that means specifically. So please let me know what that is specifically, Spartacus, and I can absolutely ask Connor whatever questions we so desire. Musty says, surely Chelsea don't go with Akampong right back because he struggled there against Bournemouth. Can you not go Gusto left back with James as a right back? Is that another viable option, do you think?
It is, but this is where I'm not 100% sure because, again, we've got no Casado, so the part of me thinks he'll move Reece into midfield.
Just out and out midfield.
Yeah. So it's either the two options is one of Andre Santos in midfield or Joshua Chempong at fullback. One of the two are going to have to play, and it's just who they deem as the more ready to do so. So yeah, the other viable option is, as they just said, Gusto or Reece, either or each fullback, and then it would be Andre Santos in midfield with Fernandes.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Fenway asking the important questions. Big up, Connor. Where can we follow you on the socials? Here, do you want to plug stuff? We've got the YouTube channel linked in the title, but where else can people find you? Yeah, so just on Twitter I'm pretty sure it's just putting Connor Holden and it should come up, but I think it's Holden Connor 00 is the ad. I always forget because whenever people ask me, I just say to put my name in. It's a class plug. It's a big sell.
Yeah. Yes. So Connor Holden on Twitter, and then I couldn't even tell you my out on TikTok. So that's very, very professional. But if you get to my Twitter, there's a link tree, so you'll have all of it there. So just somehow find your way there.
Yes.
And then
there we go. And I'm following you on Twitter, and I don't follow that many people on Twitter. So if you want more Connor and you can't find him for whatever reason, go to my Twitter, go to following, and he will be one of the 50 or 60 names that are there. Excellent content on Chelsea on the YouTube, and just excellent content generally on Twitter. Because I was
going to say, especially on Twitter, I talk about everyone.
I was going to say, you've done some amazing work on City, for example, haven't you? So definitely worth a follow, even if you just want City content from a more neutral perspective and lens, and I think that and analytical lens, and I think that is really important. One more question. Okay, we've got the question here, and then I do want to just chat about what you've made of City this season. Spartacus has clarified. Says, how does Connor think Donnarumma has impacted our side? Is it a net positive or a net negative? I think you hesitated.
Yeah, because I'm not sure. I think it's a net positive this season because of the way the meta has moved to more direct play, to sort of, again, shifting between man-to-man and zonal structures, which can sometimes leave openings for shots. And I think he's a much better shot stopper than Edison in that sense.
Yes.
So, and in big games and moments like that, I think it gives you a different type of player. But obviously, as you said as well, your build-up has suffered. That is one reason. I think there are structures to it that could help facilitate not having a goalkeeper that can step out and use his feet. But yeah, I think my answer would be net positive this season. But if the meta shifts back, which I'd imagine it will in 1 to 2 years, then I think then maybe you're looking at it a little bit differently.
Okay, interesting answer. I like it. That's good. Just to follow up to that, Musty says, would you take Donnarumma at Chelsea then?
Do you know what? I had this in the summer, and people aren't going to like this. I said no because, and this was my reasoning. A lot of the things that Chelsea didn't like last season, what they wanted from a keeper, was the mistakes that Sanchez was making on the ball. What Sanchez is good at is he is actually a really good shot stopper. He is actually extremely good at claiming the ball in the air.
Very good.
Unbelievable. And that is his strengths. I actually think his strengths profile much closer to Donnarumma in terms of that is what he does well. He claims the ball, he makes good saves, in that sense. So my argument was, if you're going to spend money on a keeper, don't make it a sideways move where you're not gaining much from, like, you're getting a better goalkeeper, but you're not getting a different set of skills. My argument would have been to, because again, the sort of annoyance was with on ball things. Donnarumma isn't going to fix that. So
no, I think that's a fair answer for sure. I mean, this season he's been brilliant. He had that quote bozo gene last season or whenever it was. But yeah, this season he's definitely, and it's still there a little bit. Like, there was one game, I think the goal was ruled out as being offside, but like Sanchez made a calamitous decision and it led to a goal which got disallowed. So it's still there, of course, and it's never going to go for every single goalkeeper. But yeah, this year he has been fantastic, and it's just interesting to watch because even though they are more like what you would define as like closer to being like traditional goalkeepers than modern goalkeepers, it's just fascinating to see. I believe they're similar heights as well. Is that right? Yeah. It's just interesting to see that one is so competent cross-claiming in the air, and then the other just struggles, and I've not really been able to pin down why that is the case, because and I know it's probably reductive and simplistic, but I just think if you're very tall and you have an albatross's reach, shouldn't it be quite straightforward for you to claim crosses and set pieces? But it's obviously not the case, so it's just interesting.
It comes to intent at that point, doesn't it? It comes to having the sort of the clear mind to go for the ball and not be sort of off put by the surroundings, because like the perception of when you're going for a ball with 6 or 7 players in the box, if you're going to miss it, like, it's quite a daunting thing to do. So I think it's one of those sort of mindset things as well with cross claiming, is that if you're going to go for it, you have to go for it. Like, you cannot half-ass that move, that action. It's not possible.
Definitely. Last question on that, and then I want to ask you what your general thoughts have been on the City. Unless there's any other questions in the live chat, then do let me know. Is it fair for me to say that the reason that City's build-up this season has been stinky at times is mainly down to the fact that Donnarumma is in goal? Is that a reasonable thing to say, or am I a cretin with an agenda?
No, that's reasonable, because it's a massive shift, and Ederson was very important to what you did last season on the ball. Like I said, I think there's ways to offset it, and I think the way is what PSG did last season with dropping someone like Vitinha into the back line. So don't get me wrong, there's things you can do, but this is the argument with all clubs. Like, there will always be something you can do, but what's the knock-on effect? Because everything has its other side, and everybody will often want the bit that they can't see, and that's sort of like my pet peeve is that everybody wants what they can't see until they see it, and then they'd actually rather revert back to what they saw before, because that's the bit they now can't see. It's the same with overlapping and inverting fullbacks for me. So yeah, I think it's a very fair sort of statement for sure.
For me, it's and just in the, I think I said this in my video on the topic, it's easy to see what is there. It's not easy to see what isn't there, if that makes sense. Like, it's easy to see, notice a pattern rather than the absence of a pattern, which just makes sense because you can obviously see it. And it's the whole shot prevention versus shot stopping debate as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Sure. So, can I have you for like another 30 or so minutes, or do you need to shoot off?
Yeah. No. Yeah. You're good.
Excellent work. That was great propaganda by me. Yeah. This whole stream was orchestrated just so I had on record a non-City fan saying, who knows what he's talking about, saying that I'm fair in what I'm saying. So I'm now just going to clip that, and every time someone has a go at me, I'm just going to have Connor pop up on the screen. Yeah, it's like a little soundbite gif. I want to ask you now, just with like the final 30 minutes or so that we have together, about what you've made of City this season, really, because there were so many unknowns going into this season with City that I didn't know what we were going to see, basically. I didn't know if it was going to be a transitional year. I didn't know if it was going to be, City just go back to their absolute best. Was it going to be somewhere in between? It looks like we've landed in the somewhere in between, because City are in a title race at the halfway stage. We dropped points yesterday. It's only 4 points off the top of the table at the halfway stage. So City clearly in a title race. What have you made of City, though, generally this season? What have been their key strengths there, but more importantly, their key weaknesses for you? And on the topic of weaknesses, can they even be fixed with the current personnel we possess?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've been probably the most enjoyable team to analyze this year. I think in terms of doing something different.
Most enjoyable team to analyze. You'll never sing that.
I think that genuinely, it's just. I think it's the shift of what Guardiola's doing, right? It's like it's the whole. Now everybody's going towards my football. I'll shift again, and just that brilliance that everybody. Like, I mean, I don't have to talk to you about the brilliance of Pep Guardiola, but yeah, brilliant. So I think that's an aspect that I've really enjoyed. I've really enjoyed the Pep Linders aspect of the sort of like how he's been a part of this next revolution of what you're doing on and off the ball. I think that the idea to sort of again pack the middle of the pitch, but not only for quick central combinations and having your players that can roam about and sort of connect like Shirky who can roam side to side and have those bits of freedom and really good combinations, but also the ability that gives you to take risks and then counter press. And I think that's very Jurgen Klopp in the sense of, I think Trent said it 2-3 years ago, that for them, the biggest weapon was their biggest offensive weapon was counter pressing.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen that with City. I think that we've seen now where you've got these players like Foden, Shirky, Bernardo Silva in the middle of the pitch, and you're going to get one of two outcomes. You're going to either fizz the ball into them and they're going to create magic and they're going to do 1-2 touch and it's going to look beautiful and you're going to score a goal that could have been tiki-taka Barcelona. Like that's, you either do that, or the other side of it, which is another positive, is you lose that ball, the risk is taken, but instantly you swarm and you're creating another opportunity. So you've essentially got two chances for offense in one moment. And I think it's that I love. I think that's been a really like refreshing to see from Guardiola, but also just the usage of those players. Like I said, the Bernardo Silva usage this season has been brilliant in my opinion. One of the best sort of tactical pieces, like decisions of the year for me so far this season. And then yeah, in terms of weaknesses, I'm not too sure. I think that still.
Can I interject? Can I tell you what I think the weaknesses are, and then you can see if you agree or not? Because I can't decide, and I'd love your thoughts on this. I can't decide whether what I'm viewing as the what I'm viewing as the defensive weaknesses at City, i.e. the press getting beaten too easily, i.e. 2/3 of our midfield being committed forwards. If we play press with our diamond press, we've got like Foden and Bernardo as the left striker and the attacking midfielder. I can't decide whether that is a fantastic structure which can work with the correct personnel, i.e. Elliot Anderson, Semenyo, or is this a structure which is far too optimistic and gung-ho and commits players so much that it's basically impossible for it to succeed regardless of the personnel that you have? I can't decide yet, and I keep going back and forth between the two. It's so hard to decide until I see it with the quote correct personnel. But from like what you've seen, like the games that I think most of, like Real Madrid would be one of those games, Nottingham Forest would be one of those games. It's happened a fair few times. Which side of the coin are you erring on?
I'll tell you what it is for me is I think the speed of attacks and speed of like intensity of what you're doing both on and off the ball impacts how physical the team needs to be. I think that again, what the top coaches like Guardiola have done over the years is the ability to play slower and keep things compact and keep the ball in control by having the ball limits the running that you have to do off of it, of course, and it also means the gaps are tighter. What happens when you then expand those is you naturally do need the physical like acumen to be able to do it. So like you said, Semenyo, Anderson. And again, I think that it can work because we've seen that sort of heavy metal style. We've seen Klopp do it. We've seen like plenty of managers go that route. But I think that personally, I think that route needs the exact personnel. And I had this sort of with Poch as at Chelsea. I personally think that it's much easier to have a team that plays the sort of like that stereotypical control with a bit slower. And again, some people might call it boring, but control on the ball and limit the running. You can do that with lots of different players. Whereas I think to do what Klopp did and to do what maybe, like you say, you're trying to do if you added a few more physical sort of specimens in that team, I think that every player to a T has to be perfect to carry that out.
Hmm.
And then yes, maybe you get lucky. Maybe you have someone like Elliot Henderson who covers ground like a freak and does it in the sense of he's two, like, and then you can sort of account for somebody else that's not.
Hmm.
But I think that especially against Real Madrid, as you mentioned, I think something that happened a lot was you'd speed up attacks really quickly, and then if you did get punished, like if they did, either you sort of they turn the ball over or you sort of like make a wrong action in the final third, the rest defense isn't set because the defense haven't been able to get up quick enough to match these. They've not matched the speed of attack.
Hmm.
So I think that would be the biggest issue. But again, I think that it's as you sort of said, it's hard to know fully whether it's personnel or structure because again, it can work. There's payoffs to everything. Like you are getting better looks at the attacking end because you're going quick and hitting them when they're not set. But the sort of symptom of that is you're now conceding worse chances too. And then if you build up slower, you might have worse chances at the attacking end, but you'll also protect more and you'll have to concede less. It's part and parcel of which you decide to go with.
I really like that summation because I think that was like the goal we conceded against Forest is like a perfect allegory for that. The whole point of the speed of the attack doesn't match the speed of the defense. When we lose the ball on the edge of the box and we've got Bernardo Silva like the furthest player forwards, and then when the goal goes back in the net, like he's obviously so high up the pitch that he's not able to get back and defend well, so it means that our midfield is isolated. So I think that's a really good way to view it, and it's probably how I'm going to try to view it now. And I'm open-minded to it, of course. Anderson coming in is an immediate upgrade. If Semenyo comes in, he's an immediate upgrade. There's no surprise that City are targeting these players who are these freak, athletic, physical profiles, whilst also still being technically sound with this more aggressive, assertive style of play, whatever you want to call it. It's still not. I still wouldn't be comfortable calling it a direct style of play, but there's no doubt
No,
that
it's not completely, is it?
Yeah.
It's like sort of the edge of it. I think what you've got to sort of be mindful of as well is the state of the Premier League, because again, what's happened in the last sort of 10 years is teams to sort of find their way to catch up have prioritized physicality. So now
Yes.
what you have is a state of a Premier League which has ridiculous physical standards now, where even if you play at your absolute best on the ball, you can be punished physically. And I think that, again, this is something we've struggled with this season, is sometimes teams, it can take us 30 minutes to settle into a game. Against Sunderland, this happened. Against Leeds, this happened, because they just physically overpower us. And then by the time we do settle in a game 30 minutes in, and say we're 1-0 down 30 minutes in, it's like we've got to almost reset and you've lost 30 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
Like that you've started the game 30 minutes late because you've not been able to physically get into it early. And I think, again, like the same with you guys, is once you add a few more physical pieces, you add Elliot Anderson, it becomes easier to settle quicker. And I think that's what Arsenal have done so well this season, is they can't, that's like the thing that's keeping them at the top of the pile for me right now, is they can't be bullied. They can settle into any game because they can play you at that game. If you want to play, let's go physical, like let's go man for man, let's play physical football, let's play set pieces, let's play direct football, they can do that. But then if you don't allow them to do that and then they do settle, they can also play. So I think that's why I think you can't bully Arsenal, whereas some of the other teams are sort of trying to catch up to that.
Mm-hmm. It's about finding that balance, isn't it? 100%.
100%.
And I think some of our players still haven't really found that balance that you touched on, the speed of the attack, and there's still times this season, like we've even seen it from like the first half of a game to the second half of a game. I think like Crystal Palace was a great example where like all of City's attacks, they were just far too quick, and the tempo just wasn't right. Second half, they calmed down a little bit, and then they controlled the game from there. And it's about getting. It's about like not getting caught in between like a basketball game. You don't want to turn into that, but you still want to utilize the direct play when appropriate. But that requires, if you're going to utilize that more, that just require excellent decision making all round. Otherwise, you make the wrong decision, and we know that the quicker the ball goes forwards, the quicker it comes back, and the counter-attack has always been a weakness for City. So I don't think we've quite got that balance yet. Maybe that just is going to be a time thing. Maybe personnel will also help, though. Absolutely. Musty's asked a question about personnel. He said, can we use Nico? Oh, he's asked two questions, sorry. Can we use Nico in the Bernardo role and then play Rodri as the defensive midfielder? And then whose spot would Anderson take up? So for me, Bernardo Silva is leaving at the end of the season. He doesn't look like he's signing an extension. So it would seem to me that the best midfield three, if we continue to play 4-3-3 off ball, would be Rodri, Anderson, Foden, in my opinion. I think that gets the best balance out of everyone. You've got Rodri, a proper number 6, a defensive midfielder, hopefully signs a contract extension. You've got Anderson, who is this fantastic, not a number 6 on his own. He's more of a number 8, but he's capable of being that hybrid player if you so desire, while still possessing a fantastic passive range. So he has all the off-ball attributes to complement Rodri. And then you have Foden, who is no slouch himself off-ball, but then he's a slightly more advanced. So if you want to think about it from a pure numbers game, you've got Rodri, your 6, Anderson, your 6-8 hybrid, and then Foden, your 8-10 hybrid, whatever you want to say, and then your wide players are a thing. So I think that's probably the best midfield that City would have next season. Before that, though, you were bigging up Bernardo, rightly so, earlier. Can Nico do a similar role this season, do you think? He can't go out to grant Shirky access to the centre. Nunes would have to do that. But can he do the defensive work? Can he do the undervalued and underappreciated work to platform Shirky successfully, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think that's the tough ask, isn't it? Because, like you said, he can't do the same platforming on ball as Bernardo can, where Bernardo can literally just move as that sort of yin and yang. He'll go wherever Shirky isn't, and Gonzalez has constraints in that because, as you said, like, he's not going to go out and play on the right wing. Like, that would be Nunes. Off ball, I think he's got the energy and the capacity to duel in that sort of area and protect behind Shirky. So if he wanted to beef up the midfield in the meantime and have them both together with, like you say, a Foden, or even all three of them, even a Bernardo Silva, Nico, like, if you wanted to really beef it up, if that was the primary ask for a one-off game, then I think, yeah, it's doable. But do I think it's the best balance for the team? Probably not. But I don't think it's like something that you can't do.
Yeah, it's maybe something worth exploring, perhaps, especially if City continue to be bullied in the midfield, which has happened a fair few times this season at 100%. Excellent stuff. I'm going to come to the chat and just to see if there's any final questions for myself or indeed Connor. I've explored all the avenues I wanted to do on this show personally, so thank you very much for being a lovely, beautiful guest today, Connor, and providing your fantastic insight. But if we do have any final questions or thoughts or topics to discuss in the final few minutes that we have on today's show, that would be lovely. I really hope you guys have enjoyed the show as well, and give us some feedback as well. Like, have you enjoyed the show? Should I bring Connor back for the reverse fixture later in the season, or have you had enough of him? Well, I know you've had enough of me, but have you also had enough of Connor equally? I'm sure you haven't, but let me know your feedback, and I can look into getting other fans of other clubs for those matches. Emperor Inc. says there's been a lot of hating on Bernardo this year. I think that's solely because he's an unk and was part of the bad performing bunch last season, and also because, as we discussed, does a lot of the underappreciated, undervalued work, 100%. Onana at Villa is the perfect representation of the modern Premier League player, and he was a player I was really gunning for to come to City because I was looking for who's a player to complement Rodri perfectly. I think Onana could have done that, definitely. Hopefully Anderson can be that guy. David says, the Sunderland game showed why Semenyo is... Oh, I haven't asked you about Semenyo. Perhaps I could ask you about him. We were just getting absolutely bullied all over the pitch. We don't have Edison anymore, so we can't consistently rely on our build-up from the back. And that's something I'm going to be touching on in my analysis video, this idea. And I think I saw a tweet from you, Connor, as well, saying this. I think it followed the João Pedro goal. This idea that you're adding another outlet from a goal kick, which when you need to go over the press in the modern game, when teams are Premier League sides nowadays are far happier to engage in a high press, that's like an invaluable trait for like one of your forward players to have, isn't it?
Semenyo and Haaland as a two. Honestly, if you're talking about playing direct over a press and you've got them two together, that is scary.
Tony Pulis would be proud. Who Fit Football? Can you give Connor the platform to say some very nice words about Igbali?
Not a chance.
Head Doctor says, for Connor, who's your 3 realistic dream transfers for Chelsea?
That's realistic, such a tough, like,
I know.
because that means they have to be sub 23. So I'll give you a few names that I like, and they're a bit more interesting than just your average name, so you can follow them as youth players. Keith Smith from AZ Alkmaar. I love him, central midfielder. I think he's a bit of a sort of baby Elliot Anderson, is how I think he could be developed.
Nice.
Where else would I mean, we need a central defender, so again, going down the youth route, even though it probably isn't the right thing to do at Chelsea, probably Jeremy Jacquet. I think a lot of people would know who he is as well. Very good. And then maybe a striker, Samu Omarodian Agahoa from Porto. So that's like 3 more outlandish names for you. Like I say, being realistic and sticking with
hipster names.
Sticking with the youth aspect of Chelsea's recruitment. Because obviously, if I came out and said someone like Semenyo, then that's not going to happen. Because so I'll give you some realism.
Yeah. I know I was going to wrap this up. I do just want to ask you about Semenyo though. Chelsea were in for him, then they weren't in for him. Can you explain why? I know this isn't about Arsenal. Why weren't Arsenal in for him? Question mark.
No idea. I think that everybody should have been in for him, and I think he made perfect sense for Liverpool. I think he makes perfect sense for you. I think he made perfect sense for Arsenal. I think he would have made perfect sense for Chelsea, other than the fact that we spent 90 million on 2 left wingers in the summer.
That's
but
the thing.
In terms of what he is as a player, he would have made sense for everyone. So yeah, I don't know why they're not in for him.
Yeah, but like, if I look at all those sides, for me, Arsenal makes the most sense. You talked about him being a monster, the fact that he's fantastic off ball, which Arteta loves, and he's just an immediate upgrade on their left side for anything they have. Whereas I look at us and I'm like, well, I think we're going to have to play mainly right wing, which I don't think is his best position. It's not a bad thing, but it doesn't seem most optimal for me. So it's just surprising that Arsenal weren't more ready for that.
Yeah, especially like a transition threat, which is something they don't necessarily have. Like, I mean, Martinelli, but he, like, again, that's a massive upgrade on Martinelli, a much more physical presence and a much sort of like more proven goal getter. So it would have made a lot of sense.
Definitely. Jack says, give Connor the channel. I'm sure we can work on that. Naveen says, I've enjoyed it. I'd like seeing more of these. Connor seems like a sensible and rational human being. Lovely insights. That's very kind words. Thank you, Naveen.
Thank you.
Big up to Emperor Inc. Welcome to the Ultras Club, matey. I know you have been a member in the past. Thank you so much for renewing your membership. And your random footballer is the forehead himself. It is Javinho. There you go. Lovely stuff. Does Connor like Liam? I can never pronounce his surname. Rosinia, given that he's watched like 1 million hours of Strasbourg in one day.
I do. It's hard to be too optimistic because, again, I'm still mourning Enzo Maresca, but I like him. I think he's a good coach. I think it's going to come 18 to 24 months too early, like 2 years, 1.5 years too early. But there's stuff to like about him. I think he's brilliant in terms of like his mentality seems like brilliant, culture and like that sort of motivator type I really like about him. And I think he's really tactically astute. He's not afraid to say that he sort of takes bits from everyone, De Zerbi, Pep. So like, again, very modern in that sense. But as much as I can sort of give the positives of Rosinia, and if you are interested, I've literally got a video coming out in about half an hour on Rosinia. So check that out. Because again, that was what the 8 hours worth of watching Strasbourg was for. So, but yeah, there's a lot to like about him, but it's tough to get too optimistic when, like I said, I'm really sad Maresca's gone, and it just feels like we're hitting a reset button at a point where we didn't need to hit it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I like that. Chelsea still need Semenyo because they have Garnacho. What's your summation of Garnacho and Gittins this season so far? Asks Naveen.
Gittins I like a lot, but I think 1, we overpaid massively, and 2, like when we signed him, I said it too, he's just extremely raw. Like, he is somebody that had to come in and be a backup, like, so that he could settle. And he's just somebody, he thrives off of confidence. And I think right now, he's not at that point because he's not hunting the ball. He's not looking to get lots of 1v1s, which is where he's best at. I think his raw qualities are brilliant, but I think he's a year or two off as well. Garnacho, I think Garnacho is brilliant at doing what he does, but he's also got so many holes and flaws. So if you only view it through the lens of if he's going to run in behind, he's going to be a chance magnet. He's very clever off ball movement, and he will get goals because he gets himself into positions, and that's not by coincidence. It's because he's good at it. Then that's positive, and that's rightfully positive on him. But if you're looking at him as a player going to go 1v1, he is extremely poor 1v1. He's not going to beat his man very often. So it all depends on the lens, of what you want and what you sort of want from your winger. So I'm not too disappointed with Garnacho this season, but that's because I'm getting what I expected from him, and I'm not getting what I didn't expect. So I'm kind of just where I am with him.
No, yeah, that's fair. Olive says, how many players are too many? If we get Anderson, every one of our midfielders is good enough to be starting. I'm wondering what a Chelsea fan thinks of this, because I think you would know, of course, as there's been bloated squads occasionally with Chelsea. I don't think it would be too many bodies for City, though, because Bernardo would be gone. Kovacic is probably going to be gone at that point as well. So it means that for the number 6, you've got Rodri as your starting number 6, and then you've got options in Nico and maybe Reinders to play there if needed. But generally speaking, you've got Rodri as your 6. And then for your more all-round number 8, you've got Anderson and Nico. And with Nico filling in DM. And then for your more offensive-minded number 8, you've got Foden and Reinders. So you've got 5 players vying, 5 starting players vying for 3 positions, which I think is quite healthy.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then you got a bit of depth with Lewis and O'Reilly, who can fill in a little bit there as well. I think that's pretty good for numbers, in fairness.
Yeah, I think that's completely fine.
I'll end it here. Last question. Who's going to win the league? Arsenal or City? That's from Daniel 007.
I really, really hope you do. Really hope you do. But I think Arsenal are going to do it, and I hate to say that because I really don't want them to. But I'm on your side. I hope you do. But
the clever money's on Arsenal. They're the favourites.
I do. I unfortunately think it's their year.
Yeah. Look, it had to happen sooner rather than later. And if they win it, then we'll just have to say, okay, but now defend it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true. Yeah, just forget about it.
Yeah, exactly. Good teams win titles, but great teams defend them.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's over the last 3 years, they should have one by now. So it's almost like it's one that's been coming. So like you say, as long as it doesn't then turn into sort of dominance and they have 1 or 2 on a trot, I think okay, we can. I still don't want them to even win 1, but we'll handle it.
Of course. Connor, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. Go check out his content. If you've enjoyed today's stream, and you better have done, then go check out his videos, because you're going to get a similar, if not better, degree of insight from Connor on Chelsea on YouTube, but then on all things football on Twitter as well. I hope you've enjoyed yourself today, Connor. I've certainly enjoyed it. You have?
I have. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. No worries at all, mate. That was the right answer. Well done. There you go. Naveen says, this has been a refreshing stream. The people are bored of me, so we'll have to have more guests on, absolutely. Don't leave us with Nobbins the Tyrant. I am that, in fairness. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. A big up to Spartacus and Puneet and E-Ink for joining the membership. Thank you guys so much for that. There will be a Sunderland post-match analysis coming out later today. Stay tuned for that. The day after that, there will be a Chelsea tactical preview. Stay tuned for that. And I've now finished my Semenyo analysis video script. So that video will be coming out in the coming days as well. It's about 3,000 words. It's going to be a good one. So stay tuned for that also. Big ups to everyone. Thank you for your support. And we'll catch you next time. Bye.